Thank you, Yamina. That was an excellent presentation. You've given us an awful lot to think about and reflect on. I've just got one little question for you. I forget now exactly when you published this, but how many downloads have you had on this report?
Well, it was published on the 18th of July, and yesterday evening we reached 6,000 downloads.
Wow, that's very impressive. Okay, I'd like to invite my participants to the roundtable, our little virtual roundtable. I'd like to start with Peter Hanley, who's, as I said earlier, is the head of the Resource Efficiency Unit at the Secretariat General of the European Commission. This is sort of the central hub of the Commission. Peter is in charge of policy coordination for the European Union, including the 2030 Climate and Energy Framework, the circular economy, environment, maritime and agricultural policies. He joined the Commission in 1994, and he obviously has a big job ahead of him right now, so there's no question about that. Peter, the EC is going to publish jointly the energy efficiency package and the market design package in December. It was supposed to be now, but it's now December. The packages will include the proposed modifications to the Energy Efficiency Directive, the EPBD, and others. The report presented today shows that when it comes to buildings, we need to go beyond the EPBD and EED to look at least those 14 instruments that Yamina mentioned. Based on the assessment made of the 14 instruments, Yamina proposes an energy efficiency framework for buildings which combines investments, climate, and energy provisions. What are your views on this proposal? Are the governance of the EU package and the streamlining of the instruments as required by better regulation and opportunity, as the report suggests, to move towards a consolidation of what Yamina calls the EU fragmented policy diamond?
Thank you very much. It's a pleasure to be here. I think that one of the main purposes of our integrated energy union governance is to break down this fragmentation between policy areas, and to do this not only at the European level but also at the national level as well. And I think through the process of getting every member state to develop an integrated plan to accompany the energy union, this is going to force a lot more policy coherence and allow us to look at what we need to achieve on energy efficiency first, whether it be in buildings or in relation to market design or in relation to renewables. So I think there's a potential for massive simplification and increased coherence of the policy. But I do not think we're going to be reopening 14 policy instruments from this particular angle. Some of them, of course, have been opened: effort sharing, the ETS, and some of the market design things are on the table. So we are looking at about a third of the particular instruments mentioned by Yamina. And I would say that she actually missed out one, which is the whole circular economy framework, which is also a guiding principle for our work on energy efficiency. Thank you.
Thanks, Peter. That's very good. And so I guess partially the ones that are related to climate, you mentioned ETS, but those, because of the whole Paris Agreement, I guess those ones related to climate will definitely be opened. That's quite encouraging. I'll come back, Peter, to you in a second. I want to ask a question to all of you first to sort of get you all feeling quite comfortable around the table. Claude Turmes is a member of the European Parliament, and he's a member of the Committee on Industry, Research and Energy. He's been an important person in this role because he's both the rapporteur of the Renewables Energy Directive and also the Energy Efficiency Directive. And even though he wasn't the rapporteur, he was also very involved in the whole development of the EPBD. And he comes from Luxembourg, and he's also the president of EUFORES, which is an important group bringing parliamentarians together. Claude, the European Parliament calls for a 40% energy savings target for 2030. The report presented today shows that 40% is needed, not only to put the EU on the Paris path, but also to create the conditions required for the paradigm shift needed to renovate Europe. As the report shows, the 40% energy savings target is the only one which is based on renovation rates close to 3% per year. And previous studies show that the 3% is the minimum needed to trigger the market transformation of renovation. would such an argument be enough to push for a more ambitious energy savings target? And how is the European Parliament going to use the evidence provided in this report to push for a more ambitious target?
Hello.
Hello.
Thank you for having me today. I think the question on the ambition is above all a question to Commission and to Member States. And one of the risks which I see of this now mixing the efficiency package with the rest of the packages that Commission will not even go to 30%. And I don't know, Peter Handley, nice that we are together in this virtual table. Am I too much afraid to that now basically you will also lose ambition, whereas I thought that if we would have got a separate efficiency, you would for sure have gone to the 30%. So that's, I think, one issue. And everybody who studies a bit statistics knows that 40% energy efficiency is what we should do. But then we have a problem of a Commission which is not really ambitious after Paris, and Member States which are even less ambitious, which explains probably also why Commission is afraid to move further up. What I like in this report is this industrial policy approach, because personally, and I thank Yamina for that, because personally I have come more or less to the same conclusion. So the fact that we have a renovation rate which is at 1% roughly in Europe, after having thrown a lot of money in certain member states for basically grants and so on, and money is cheap, so money seems not to be really the problem. So I think there is still a problem of the whole logistics around renovation and deep renovation. So I very much share Yamina's idea, and that brings me to what should we expect from Commission. I know that President Juncker is very much afraid of populism in Europe, and I understand, and Peter, if I'm wrong, you will correct me, I understand that Commission is even afraid of saying that every house should be ready for electric charging. So you can imagine that this Commission is not the one who will come forward with what would be necessary to trigger a faster renovation rate in Europe, which would be something like you are not allowed to sell any E or D building on the European market in 25. So this Commission will, or Peter, if you do it, say it to me. Good. And if Commission is not willing to really rock the boat on residential buildings, then I think Commission should at least rock the boat on commercial buildings, because there we have its investment funds, they are cross-border, we have few actors, Schneider, and so on. So we can move through automatization of the commercial buildings. And for me, commercial buildings are really a more quick platform for organizing the new energy world, where digital meets energy, transport meets energy, and balancing and storage, and so on and so on. Good. Which suddenly brings us back to residential buildings. I think the thing which I expect very positive outcome is the smart financing for smart buildings. Also because Commission is 1 year after I had said we need more technical assistance and we need a segregated fund. The evidence shows that I was right, because in FC, although it functions well, in general, it is a complete disaster on energy efficiency. So, and Commission has understood that they will correct this. And then comes basically the next thing, which is, I think we need to put more attention in EED on these long-term building roadmaps, and we should combine it with something which basically Yamina proposes, which is getting, in a certain sense, a pressure on innovation in each and every member state on getting this kind of one platform in each and every member state on large-scale, industrial-scale renovation, and a bit along the ideas of Yamina. And the question maybe also to Peter is, what will be the vehicle for that? And we could use, in a certain sense, EURICS, which will come next year, the dimension, the research and innovation dimension of the energy union, to really earmark sufficient money, and then maybe in the governance structure also of the whole energy union, bring enough pressure on member states that they really go to organize this kind of platforms.
Claude, does this mean, for one thing, I'll let Peter answer some of those questions if he wants, but in terms of the Industry, Research and Energy Committee that you're on, the ITRA committee, are you going to make sure that all the members of it read Yamina's report?
For sure, I think it's really a good report, because it finally addresses something which I think the industry hasn't not enough spoken about, which is we need to improve the logistics and the appeal, and maybe what I didn't mention is I think Velux is doing this idea also to have basically easy to be accessed information about how you renovate a house, and being aware that maybe 5% of citizens renovate a house because of energy and climate change, and 55% because of comfort. So we have to be more realistic about what really drives, and then of course still put enough pressure on member states. Because certain member states, it's especially in Central and Eastern Europe, I have still difficulties to understand why they don't move with all the money we throw at them through structural funds, why they don't move deeper into renovation of the building stock, because that's an answer to the energy poverty question.
Peter, would you like to answer Claude, or do you want me to just sort of skip to the
No, I'd like to come back. It's true, we were due to come out with the energy efficiency proposals this week, and we decided not to. And the reason is not that we're running away from any target, discussion, or level of ambition, but because we genuinely believe that energy efficiency first principle means that it makes more sense to bring out the energy efficiency when we're bringing out the things to which it's closely related, so the market design, the renewables, and the governance. And the second reason is that we always knew that in setting out legislative proposals which only apply from 2021, we're not changing things enough on the ground now. So we want to have a strong enabling package which will allow action on the ground to boost things like the renovation work already between now and 2020. And that's done much better if we do it as an enabling package on renewables, energy efficiency, and the market design, rather than treating these things as silos. And I would agree with Claude, watch this space for the Smart Financing for Smart Buildings initiative, because it's very much about bringing the private finance to play to get the leverage effect on what public money we have. And as Claude has rightly pointed out, a lot of it's about making sure you've got a project pipeline in place and technical assistance provided to make sure that the projects are ready to go. I think those would be my comments at this stage.
Good, but Peter, if I just may come in, the problem of your approach is that EURICS is not ready. Because EURICS is, for me, also must be part of the enabling policy package.
That's true. The research, innovation, and competitiveness is a key enabler for all this, and we just need a bit more time to get that in place. But there will be certain elements of the innovation strand coming with us already when we come out in December with the big package.
Good, but will you this idea to do things all over Europe, a bit like Energy Strong in Netherlands? This kind of also the idea of Yamina to say, look, we need from Europe to push member states into creating national platforms which really bring the people together. And then also this issue of how can we trigger innovation? And innovation has to do with skills, has to do with social dialogue, structured social dialogue. So is that part of your thinking already at Commission?
Yeah, all these elements are present. I mean, we'll be hoping that this whole process of bringing together the national strategies will bring all the stakeholders together and allow a forum where they can have a good, solid discussion about how to treat renovation of the building stock as one of the key drivers of modernizing the economy, with the skills dimension, with the reinvigoration of the construction and materials industries, and the innovation dimension. I mean, I think it all fits together.
Thank you, gentlemen. We've got to keep moving on. I'd like to take a little different perspective. I'd like to bring in Patty Fong into this right now. Patty Fong is the program director of the Energy Efficiency Program at the European Climate Foundation, and she's a member of the leadership team of it. The European Climate Foundation has been, saying quite active is sort of an understatement, has been very active in the whole EU level area to do with energy efficiency for the last 7-8 years. I forget now when it was created. Patty will certainly remember. Patty's a member of the board of the Buildings Performance Institute Europe, and that's obviously an important organization related to the buildings. She's on the steering committee of the EU Coalition for Energy Savings, and she's on the board of the EU Alliance to Save Energy. Patty, welcome. The Energy First concept was introduced by the Commission in its strategy for the Energy Union, published in February 2015. The European Climate Foundation has set an Energy First working group to further develop on the actions needed to make the principle a reality. Could you please tell us about the progress made by your working group, and how do you see Yamina's proposal of the Energy First framework for buildings, combining investments, climate, and provisions? Please, Patty.
Thank you, Rod and Yamina, for the opportunity to be on this panel. So the efficiency first concept was introduced in the strategy as a result of an intensive advocacy effort by the efficiency community to prioritize efficiency in the energy framework. And that was at the beginning of 2015, when it was clear that the European Commission wasn't moving quickly enough to actually define and operationalize this concept, that it might remain just a concept on paper. We convened a working group consisting of a range of policy experts from power markets, legal, finance, NGO industry, policymaker perspectives to come up with basically a roadmap, a definition of how to apply this across the EU legislative framework. And so what emerged was a report which defines why efficiency first is important and how it's essential to achieving an affordable low-carbon energy system. And for those who haven't seen the result of this work, which we first produced a report, a discussion paper earlier this year, really it's the principle of considering the potential for efficiency first in all decision-making related to energy, and where it's shown to be most cost-effective, especially considering their contributions in driving jobs and economic growth and increasing energy security and reducing climate change. Efficiency should be prioritized. And so applying this principle is really meant to redress the bias towards prioritizing increasing supply over saving energy. So this group also produced basically a brief which laid out 10 near-term actions for the European Commission to make it a reality. And you can download both the report and the brief on the ECF website. And so some of the 10 actually are already mentioned by Yamina in her report, which includes making the target more ambitious, to at least 30%, ideally towards 40%, which is the cost-effective potential, which is dealing with some of the disincentives in financing efficiency, so to align the financial flow. So it's stressing the putting efficiency on an even playing field for state aid approval, for reviewing how accounting rules treat efficiency investments, providing additional technical assistance for project development. And it also includes addressing, some of the other areas beyond efficiency legislation in terms of the energy market design and renewable energy. So it's, for example, it's making sure that there is a clearly defined role for energy system operators and for regulatory authorities to own the implementation of efficiency and to drive its implementation. And it also includes, for example, ensuring that there is a social perspective taken instead of a private sector perspective taken when looking at the impact assessments of energy efficiency investments. And in terms of how this can be applied to the building sector, so this analysis applied to efficiency across the board, but it also needs to be developed specifically for the building sector. As Yamina mentioned, for Europe to contribute its fair share towards the Paris Agreement, we need to decarbonize our energy system. And this implies that we need buildings to be consuming basically net zero energy by 2050. This will require significantly increasing the rate and depth of energy renovations compared to today, and enabling buildings to actively participate in an integrated energy system. So by promoting a net zero building stock, which is underpinned by an energy first, efficiency first principle, it will ensure that basically this sequence will support a more affordable and feasible transition to a more low carbon sustainable energy system. This means that in practice, we have to reduce energy consumption as much as possible first, then meet residual demand with renewable energy options, and at the same time enable buildings to provide flexibility, storage, and renewable energy to the grid. And for this to happen, buildings need to be recognized and invested in as part of the core energy infrastructure, just like pipes, wires, and power plants. And just kind of commenting on Claude's concerns, I actually think that the delay, I would agree with Peter that the delay of, or let's say merging of the energy efficiency legislation into a winter package actually is an opportunity for more coherency in the climate energy framework and to actually ensure coherency on applying the efficiency first principle across the board. It's going to be, let's say, more challenging. It will require more coordination, both in the Commission, in the Parliament, and also in the advocacy community. But the end result potentially is much bigger, and it ensures a step forward towards a stronger, more coherent governance framework for energy renovation market. And I might just add finally that, Claude, you mentioned that perhaps there's an opportunity to focus on the commercial sector, and this is something that as ECF we are looking into. We're scoping out an initiative. We also agree that the commercial sector perhaps is another area where it is cross-border. It's perhaps in terms of the ownership structure and a number of stakeholders that you have to address, could be another area where we can start to make, let's say, finding leaders in the field. So we are scoping out a leadership initiative called Buildings 2030, and which has been inspired by the Better Buildings initiative in the US that was first launched by the Department of Energy and supported by the White House in 2011. And that basically has challenged companies, executives, to commit to basically an energy reduction target and commit to sharing their strategies for investing in their own building portfolio and participating in a peer-to-peer learning platform. And we also see this as an opportunity not only to focus on the potential savings for greenhouse gas and for energy, but also to highlight the, let's say, the non-energy benefits. So impacts, for example, related to workforce retention, to employee satisfaction, to workplace environment, because these are actually will be the key drivers for investment decisions in the buildings, and especially in the commercial sector.
Thanks, Patty. That was very good. It's very useful to know. Now let's take a little different perspective, and let's go to Roland Hunsaker from the World Business Council for Sustainable Development. He's the Director for Sustainable Buildings and Cities. And in his role, he's in charge of the coordination of a platform for early strategic engagement between cities and companies representing different sectors and expertise. So they have certain current flagship projects are energy efficiency in buildings, zero emission cities, as well as sustainable mobility. Roland also has the advantage that he doesn't have to get involved in EU politics and negotiations on a day-to-day basis, so his perspective could be a little different. Roland, the Building Council is the World Business Council for Sustainable Development is a global business leader organization. Since the Paris Agreement, Peter Bakker, the president, has been calling to move towards zero emissions, completely change the course, and move towards zero emissions by 2050. Could you please tell us more about how the interpretation represented by your organization of the Paris Agreement, and how does this match or not the proposed visions towards net zero energy buildings that we've seen in Yamina's report today?
Thank you, Rod. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Thanks. Hello, everyone. I'm very pleased to participate in this debate. And yes, Rod, I think you have invited me to give a bit more of a global perspective and also a perspective from the private sector. WBCSD, we're a global business association. We have about 200 multinational members. And we all see sustainability as an urgent imperative, but also a large business opportunity. And that is largely what we see in the building sector. And this discussion here is actually music to our ears, and it's music to the ears of many business leaders. Our position is indeed net zero emissions well before the end of the century, and that aligns with the Paris Agreement. And we are calling on all our members to support that. The Paris Agreement sends a very strong signal for a low-carbon world, and I think it will be the national determined contributions that will be critical in getting us on this path. They have to be reviewed regularly and strengthened. I'll just briefly quote Peter in a recent article he wrote with regards to the real estate industry. The Paris Agreement has created an irreversible path towards the new low-carbon economy. It's time now to usher in a new era that rewards those companies who integrate the risks and opportunities of climate change into their decision-making. So climate risks have to be addressed in every business decision. I think that is a clear signal from Paris, and the forward-looking businesses that are in our membership, they all see that. Specifically in WBCSD, we call on businesses to also collaborate and join partnerships because single businesses cannot solve this challenge. We need to innovate and we need to change the energy system. So we're running a global project on low carbon technology partnerships, and different sectors are covered, among them the building sector with our energy efficiency in buildings program, but also others like renewables, agriculture, low carbon freight, etc. We're calling on the members and companies at large to use an internal carbon price that will create the incentives to invest in low carbon solutions and to use targets, science-based targets to reduce emissions. So very much aligned also with the work Patty has just described. The transition, as we see, will be driven by the national emission reduction plans and their strengthening, economic signals, hopefully through carbon pricing, and obviously business leadership, and that's what we are about. In terms of the buildings agenda and energy efficiency, as I just mentioned, this discussion is very important, and I really commend Yamina's work. It echoes a lot of what we are also doing. We have long advocated that we can reduce energy use by 50% with existing technologies and best practices and with positive economic returns. It's a report we had already issued a few years back in 2010. And we are currently working in local markets where we really try to overcome the fragmented value chain to develop a common ambition on how we develop action plans for energy efficient buildings. And our call, and that reflects very well again what you have said before, is for companies to join and work together with other stakeholders. We need to work with cities, with the private sector and end users to work on this transition. We need to create a market awareness and a market pool for these solutions to come. And it's really the value chain alignment and the innovation that also Yamina is calling for that is needed. So your idea of these kind of energy renovation facilitators, or how you call it, if I understand it correctly, it's a critical role. We see, there's also many colleagues on this webinar that represent different businesses. I think the solutions are there, but we really need to come together and collaborate more to drive that innovation across the full value chain and overcome that fragmentation. So I think that's a strong call from our side. As you said, I'm less familiar with all the EU policy tools, but Yamina's work clearly helps me as well. I'm Swiss, so I'm not even in the EU, so I certainly have less understanding, but I think it's very important that the review really takes that into account, and Yamina's work is very important in this context. Thanks, Rod. Back to you.